Welcome to a first in the series where we explore people's creative spaces. First up, we have my good friend Sharooz. Some of his past ventures include being a founding member for Sample Magic, Audier, and Attack magazine. Currently, he is working on a new project called Wavetick, which is a sample and sounds royalty-free company. In the past, he has released music under his own name, Sharooz, done remixes for Moby, Craig David, and Robin. He also co-produced a track with Vince Staples last year, and he is currently releasing music under his own name, Princey Pleasures. All the links are in the description. So let's go check out Sharooz's creative space.
Yeah, well, I'm Sharooz. I'm occasionally known as Prince of Pleasure. I run a company called Wavetick. I'm the founder of a company called Wavetick. I'm a sound designer, a writer of sorts, and I like to tinkle and make sounds really, and make instruments and do remixes and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's a bit about me.
So people are probably seeing this and being like, you have all this stuff, do you actually use all of this?
Yeah, well, it's not as much as I used to, for sure. I mean, it all serves a place in the creative ecosystem, but it definitely doesn't get used as much as it used to. I mean, convenience is obviously clearly, a big part of this, but it's weird. You turn something on, and as we spent about an hour setting up before we started here, and we actually ended up with some really nice happy accidents. So I think that's a really cool part of it as well. Just knowing that you just switch something on and there's a pattern preloaded in there, or there's some sort of sequence that's been in there for a couple of years, and you just hit sync and it just all gets going, which, these happy accidents are why I still keep a lot of this stuff. And of course it sounds great, very crisp and analog. You don't need me to tell you that.
Yeah, so if you want to walk us through some of the bits, obviously probably the ones up closest, we could start actually to either side of your screen, because you've got a lot of bits there.
Yeah, so, well, the stuff that's sitting at the top of the racks is the stuff that I'm not using, and I'm going to put on reverb or something. But we've got the harmonizer, the DSP 4000, which is not the more sought after model of harmonizer. The H3000, which is on the other side, is the one that most people are crazy about. But there's a couple of patches I really like on that, and I got it super cheap. So it just has this beautiful, I actually prefer it off the record to the H3000. It does some stuff. It's just got this really gritty, weird, I think it's 16-bit, like horror vibes about it, Carpenter sort of thing, 90s horror soundtrack, and it's great on guitars. And then below that, we've got the MKS80, which has kind of been underused, if I have to be honest, but it's people say it's like a Jupiter 7. It sits somewhere between a Jupiter 6 and Jupiter 8, and I think that this one actually might have belonged to Paul Oakenfold's studio. It's definitely got a history. So it had some quite cool patches on that cartridge, which still work. And occasionally I'll dive into it and get some cool sounds out of it, but it doesn't get used that much. It's kind of a pain in the arse to get to the panel.
And then you've got one of two of these.
Yes, that's the MKS80. Yeah, there's two of those. Yeah, there's one of them belonged to Martin Gore of Depeche Mode. That one's also came with a bunch of presets, and this one is. I think this one sounds a bit better. They're different revs. People are crazy about a particular revision of it. One I think is a Rev 4, the other's a Rev 5. One of them does sound better, but I'm not sure which. I think it might be that one actually.
And then over this side, you just got what we were talking about before.
So we've got the H3000 there, which is really nice. I mean, I use that for sort of snares and kicks and things like that, just for the sort of room reverbs and the plates. It's a classic. Everybody used it in mid to late 80s, and it really, I think mid to late 80s, don't quote me on that, but it's definitely got a very aromatic sound to it, and the presets are fucking amazing. So that's one of my go-tos for sure.
You got the Distressor.
Yeah, Distressor doesn't get that much action, unfortunately, anymore either, but it is great on those kicks and snares. I've been on many videos in the past where I've sort of talked about what it does to drums and so forth. So, occasionally I'll patch it in. And then below that, we've got the Deckard's Dream, which I love. It's a great instrument to play. It sounds nothing like a CS80 in my opinion, but is fantastic to have actually, and it was a slow burner for me, but I use it a lot now. With that, with an Eventide is absolute heaven.
And I did the patches as well.
Yeah, we've got a couple. Well, yeah, you did the patches. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, they sound great. Yeah, I don't know if I actually have your patches loaded in there, but I can say that I've heard what you've done on it, and they sound great. Yeah, so.
And then obviously to the side we got
this is
the classic drum machines and
this is kind of like the only part of this. It's not very ergonomic, and I do definitely need to work on this. And this part is really the only ergonomic bit. And so when I sort of hit play, everything just kind of starts really, and it's all synced. It just all syncs with. That's one good thing about this room. Everything's in sync, and you hit play, and you can just sort of step sequence everything with a low latency, low buffer setting in your computer. It all just kind of syncs up and creates this very nice tight groove. And it doesn't take that much messing around to really get it going. I mean, it's about half an hour of troubleshooting to sort of make sure everything's tightly in sync, but I have got some logic to how I do it. I've got lots of DIN sync splitters and MIDI splitters behind all these racks. And what basically happens is I send the clock to this SBX1, and that just, from the computer from the door, and that just shoots everything around here, and everything's kind of daisy chained, but rather than going through devices, I'm going through a bunch of different splitters. So I have probably about 20 devices synced in all through DIN sync and MIDI coming out of this SBX1.
Awesome. And then you got the classic MPC 60 up there.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, I just recently had a friend finally, after resisting on modding everything I've had in here, I had it modified to fit this old, to get all my discs onto USB, and I can finally now explore this library that came with it, which belonged to King Unique Funk Force, who are famous for doing a slew of remixes in the 90s, and all their discs came with it really. And I have over 200 3.5-inch floppies, only about a tenth of which are on this thumb drive, but it's enough to get some really nice libraries, and I've got all the sequences in there as well, so you can actually load all the sequences from all the remixes they did drum work for.
One time when I was over here, we pulled up one of the songs on YouTube, and then you got the samples, and we kind of all the MIDI sequences and everything were in there. Which was kind of cool.
Really early defected stuff. I think there were a couple of defected EPs that King Unique did, and all the drums from those EPs are on these discs and the sequences. So it's really quite neat to have access to that, and occasionally I'll throw it into sync with everything else and just get some really, and sometimes I just sample through it as well, by the way. I don't even use the drum machine that much. I literally run samples through it and come back out, and you get that beautiful MPC 60 grit. It's like the S950 sampler really inside there, the brain of it, and it's well known for making all your drum hits sound super gritty.
And you've done a bunch of stuff with Korg over the years, obviously.
Yeah, so I did patches for, I've been working with them for over 10 years now. So the Electribe, particularly this particular workstation, is just, I used to use it for like live performances and doing videos and stuff. I mean, it's been massively usurped by more fun, modern things that are out there at the moment. But there's something really, I don't even have it synced in, but there's something just really uber up front about how the sequences run through it, and the sort of visual representation you get on these pads, and it's really well laid out. I think this one's here because of the UI, but I just fire samples into that and just shoot them out, and it sits quite nicely on top of all this other stuff.
Yeah, you've got obviously the classic 707, 727.
Yeah, they still do their thing.
303.
Yeah. I mean, this is like the acid house setup here, really, and these are really fun. I'm a big exponent of the 707. I just use it on pretty much everything, and I double the 808 kick with the 707 kick. So that's a lot of fun. I like the snare and the clap as well. I mean, it's kind of like a 909 clap, but yeah, it's used in a lot of my work, and it just sits with an 808 really well, in my opinion. Use hi-hats off the 606. Sometimes I bring snares in from the 909. Yeah, and that's kind of how I work with these. And then I just ride the volumes in and out whenever I sort of don't want an element in there. So, And then the accent from this goes into the Juno 60, which is kind of cool. Yeah, and that's kind of how I really get stuff started. I mean, we can do a proper jam later, but you know, I just basically, that's my starting point a lot of the time. That's how I made a lot of Prince of Pleasure records. And then I have some stuff that's got straight MIDI CV going into it, like the SH-101. I always program that, even though you can get quite a nice sync going if you get the clock in going from like the drum hits from the 909 or the 808. I prefer to actually program it. You can get way more hands-on with it if you do that. Yeah. If I pull the CV gate out, I've got one of my typical, very, very typical patches in there, which I use on pretty much everything. And one of my tricks is just to bring the release and sustain up. Yeah, it's great. I mean, I start with like a really super deep bass line down here, then I, obviously just pull the filters up, and even if I just have like one stab of it going. Yeah, best envelope in the game in my opinion. And when you transpose it up, you can do some pretty fun stuff with it as well.
I love my 101.
They're just so nice. They just sound, for me, it's like almost like a Moog, you know? But more, I just prefer the sound of this. Not a lot of people use it for lead stuff, but yeah.
And then obviously you got some more newer stuff. You got the DRM.
Yeah, I guess you could call it newer. I don't know if it's even plugged in, but I love this thing. It's got, it's actually one of my personal favorites now. It's sort of, I love a snare and clap. That's snare for me. And I don't even trigger this. I've got the version that's really hard to trigger. You have to sort of set the MIDI notes before you turn it on. So I just jam it in a lot of the time. And these, exactly how I have these sounds set is how I always use it. Like I have this kind of combo between the kick and the drum triggers here, which is sort of my basic groove. And
you got the Electron Analog 4, and then
this I just don't really use anymore, unfortunately. I mean, it has got some sound, like it's got a really nice sequencer, and it sort of sends out CV gate on to a couple of devices, but I use it more for the sequencer than the actual sounds inside it. Yeah.
And then tucked away under here, we've got it's not plugged in at the moment. But...
Yeah, the LXR2. I love this thing, actually. Super easy to use, great kick. Brought the wrong power adapter. I had it in London with me, and I brought it back in my hand luggage, and unfortunately brought the wrong power adapter, so I can't fire that one up. Monopoly, one of my absolute favorites. Love that for like effects and stuff. I think it's had a brain injury, so unfortunately it's not working at the minute, but it's definitely one of my faves. And then the Lindrum, which is just absolutely one of my all-time. Doesn't really take much introduction. See if I can get that set up. Yeah, it really is one of my absolute faves, that is. Get anything out of this. All right, there we go. Yeah, and of course you can tune all the drum hits down. I've got some like EEPROM toms, which aren't the stock toms, which sound just amazing. I think we've got I think you have to sort of, oh, you did down here. Just sounds so good, like the, can't tune them, unfortunately, because they're on knee prom, but they're just so nice. Yeah, tuning seems to be bollocks on them, but it's, yeah, love this thing. We'll never get rid of this. It'll go to the grave with me. I mean, that kick snare combo. See if we can... God, I forgot how to use this. There we go. Wow, that's fast. I love the internal sequencer as well. That's us. And you can hit the hi-hat decay, get this like really nice tight groove going on. Yeah, I just love this thing, man. There we go. Yeah, I love it. Anyway, yeah, that's one of my.
And then some of the ones tucked away, we got the Pro
Yeah,
one.
the Pro One. Yeah, this doesn't get used that much. I feel like I'm saying that about everything, but it's just, I think there is definitely a thing that's having too much choice, and a lot of this stuff is at this point sort of legacy gear. I mean, it does sound great. I just haven't turned it on for such a long time, and it's a little bit unpredictable for me. I prefer to sort of know where I sort of sit with stuff, and it's very hard for me to fit it in the mix because it is just so bloody fat and loud. So yeah, I don't really get to use it that much anymore, unfortunately.
Nice. And then you kind of get
The Lin 9000 though, this thing's fun. Let's see if we can patch that in. That's a yes, of course I just sample the drums in, to be honest, these days, like, but you know, you can actually no, it's not having it. No, doesn't like the sequencers. Taking a bit of a battering, that one, unfortunately. And then you've got the MKS 80 next to it, which has the Martin Gore signature on it, and the sort of ARP Odyssey above that, the DMX, the Poly 61, which sometimes gets used for lead stuff. Drumulator, which has some great drum hits, which sometimes gets brought in for some of the percussion and snares.
So obviously we got more of the right side is more of the jam station, and then we have more of the keyboards
Station, yeah.
over to the left hand side. Starting at the top, you've got the one that I feel like you rinse out.
Yeah,
a
it's a
lot.
weird one, this. It's an underdog, but I absolutely love Nord. And the Nord Lead 3 for me was just the one that really sort of brought the whole concept to life. I mean, it's super digital and there's no effects in it. But there's something about the arpeggiator and just the way in which it does FM, the way in which it's got this sort of exponential modulation in it. I pretty much I built a VST a few years back called Zone, and I pretty much modeled the sound engine on this thing because I was so taken by what you can actually do, and it's very hands-on. Yeah, and you know, normally how I work with it is I sync it and just hold down a few notes and just switch between patches. I've spent maybe 10 years making patches for this thing, and I'll give you a quick blast. It just sounds really nice when you sort of get it synced with everything else. yeah, it just has this really edgy, sort of super digital sound about it, but I love it.
I mean, you've got so many warm analog synths.
Yet I always go to this.
To have something a bit weird is kind of, it can be kind of a good place to go sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And it just got so many nice presets in there. Like they all just do. I mean, I've programmed these all over the years. Like they're very characteristic of my sound because I've rinsed almost every single one.
Did any of the original Sharooz stuff come from the...
Yeah, I think, yeah, it did actually. A lot of remixes I did over the years came out of this thing. So yeah, it's definitely been rinsed on just, I mean, I've got this rule, the SH-101 and the Nord Lead 3 basically feature on pretty much everything, so yeah.
And then obviously as you go down, it's just classic synth.
Yeah, this is where it starts to get really interesting. Obviously the Juno 106, it's a workhorse. I mean, everybody's got one at this point, and it's everybody's got one, but you know, it's figures in just about every sonic armory you can imagine. Yeah, absolutely love it for pads and basses. Jupiter 6, not everyone's natural choice, but I love the arpeggiator, and there's like this unison detune thing it's got going on, which I pretty much use in everything. It's definitely been with me for a very long time and something which I'm quite deeply embedded with. See if I can, I might have to cut this, but see if I can get some audio from it.
It's all right.
Yeah, we'll do it there.
Yeah. And yeah, because everyone's heard these since, so it's not like a new.
Yeah, I'm not. It's not like a new reveal. Prophet 5 does exactly what it says on the tin. Super fat analog bass, and yeah, just huge, and you know, one of my all-time faves. And then the OB8. This one doesn't have MIDI. It's not in any way sort of retrofitted, so it kind of gets forgotten about a bit, unfortunately, like a lot of stuff these days. But yeah, it's still an all-time classic and just has such a beautiful warm sound to it. We can fire that up and check it out later. And then we've got the T8 down here, and the which was the, I think it's got a really nice feel to the keys, and I believe it was one of the first synths that had a sort of aftertouch built in, and they go for crazy money actually. I got it for about $1,500, and I think they're worth about 10 times that now. The expander, which I bought off a guy called TJR, they're amazing. I've got all the original patches. He really looked after it and restored it. It does some...
I think Enrique had an expander as well.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I mean, they are the crown in the jewel of Oberheim, really, and are known for having some really quite unique sound. Got the JD800, which I love. It's kind of like Roland's answer to the... I was going to say it's Roland's answer to the D50, but of course the D50 is Roland. It's sort of in that same family, and there's a lot of hands-on editing. For some weird reason, I love the presets that come with it. This one's totally fucked. I probably need to service it. The glue comes off the keys. It's a known issue with it. But, you know, it's one of those things that you can easily do with Roland Cloud, but I do love having all this sort of hands-on stuff here, and the orange glow that you get from the display. It's irreplaceable. I'm sort of emotionally attached to it in a weird kind of way.
And then you
the
got
SP1200.
Yeah, you just got that one modded.
No, this has never been modded. No, it just got such nice sounds. I mean, this is really the best drum sampler that I've ever heard. And they've tried to redo this. It doesn't come close. Even a 909 hi-hat sounds great through it. Yeah, everything just sounds amazing through this thing. I put some chord sounds through it a few years back, and they're still on the OS that load the floppy disk that loads the OS, so they've sort of been grandfathered in, but they just sound so good.
And then kind of a couple of forgotten pieces. You got the emulator.
Yeah, this is kind of like, I guess it's an SP1200 with a keyboard, and I just recently started getting into this. I discovered all this huge library of discs that came with it, and really started getting into it in a big way. Actually, there are some phenomenal sounds on 5 1/4 inch floppies. Like we've got a bunch of Peter Gabriel sounds. Like it belonged to some Swedish soundtrack guy. I'm sure he's well known. I just can't remember who he was. And we picked it up on Craigslist when I first moved to LA for pittance. It was about like $500. And the sound library alone is worth more than that now. But yeah, it's incredibly fun. I dropped it recently, but it still works perfectly. It's built like a brick shit house.
And then tucked away underneath.
Still in its packaging. I mean, I'm going to say this is a recent acquisition. I've had this for ages now, and honestly, I love it. I just haven't had enough space to, it's either that or the emulator at this point. And I feel like right now it's the emulator, and at some point I'll probably get back into the Moog. It's a real player's instrument. I mean, I love just playing it. Haven't managed to figure out a way to fit it into my music yet, given how expensive it is, but yeah, it does the job. Anyway, yeah, got a couple of minutes of it there. Yeah, you can just roll like, I don't know, a minute of it or